I was a police reporter, so I know some of it.
Yeah, but you know what we're talking about. You know how they can go in and dust for fingerprints, or they can find powder burns on your hand and know you fired a gun, correct?
Right.
Well, that's called forensic science, is it not?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, shouldn't we apply forensic science to the crime of 9/11? Yes or no?
Yeah, well, of course we got to.
Okay. Well, what if I play you some audio from a man who does controlled demolitions for a living, and he's going to sit there and tell you in his own words that 9/11, the Building 7 specifically, was definitely a controlled demolition. His name is Tom Sullivan. He works for a place called Controlled Demolition Incorporated, which, ironically, also removed all of the wreckage from both Oklahoma City and downtown Manhattan. It's about a minute and 20 seconds here. I'll roll it for you right now.
My name's Tom Sullivan. I worked for Controlled Demolition Incorporated, CDI, the top-rated explosives demolition firm in the world, owned by the Loiseau family during the years surrounding 9/11. And I worked for them as an explosives loader for 2.5 years. As an explosives loader, my job was to place explosives in the buildings to prepare them for demolition. I was licensed while in New York by the New York Fire Department to handle explosives. And I worked on major projects such as Seattle Kingdom, the Three River Stadium, Philadelphia Naval Hospital, and Keyspan gas holders in New York, among others. And in the case of a steel frame building, that means we load them with RDX cutting charges, which are loaded with individual delays, sometimes as many as 2 to 3 different delays on a given floor. So you have to understand the work is complex and precise and requires years of experience. I knew from day one that this was a controlled event. And why I did that is because simply looking at Building 7, you have a sudden collapse of the building. It's fairly symmetrical as it comes down. There's the classic kink, which means that the center core fails first, and you can see that on the video, and the building falls near free fall. So I really honestly didn't believe this from day one, because this is the way buildings classically come down with a controlled demolition.
Your thoughts, Tucker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. This guy blows up buildings for a living.
Yes, he does.
He watched, like everyone else did, watch those buildings come down in a really weird way that looked like they'd been blown up, like you always see. You know, who hasn't seen images of buildings being demolished, and that's how they collapse? And that's exactly what the Twin Towers and Building 7 looked like when they came down.
Meaning?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. That's not evidence that it actually happened. You know, that the hijackers didn't do it.
Oh, that would just be, no, we would consider that the expert testimony when someone were referring to whether it was not. You would go to someone who does it for a living. But I actually have more audio. Now, this is, have you ever heard of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth?
No. Architects and, yes. In fact, I think I've interviewed them. AE911truth.org
is their website. Richard Gage formed them many, many years ago, and they're up to, I'd say, 1,700, maybe 1,800 architects and engineers that have signed a petition. These are people that, you know, work with steel, design steel buildings, cut steel, know the melting, you know, they know stress loads, they know how buildings react, they know how both regular cutting charges work and something we'll talk about here in a second called nanothermite, which is actually an incendiary. An incendiary doesn't blow it up. It actually reaches a massive high temperature very quickly, goes to about 4,800 degrees, from room temperature to 4,800 degrees, just like that. And, of course, if it's on any steel, it'll cut right through it just like a knife through butter. Now, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth decided to take some dust samples, and they went out and took 9 different dust samples from all around the World Trade Center. 9 different people, you know, people save the dust as a weird kind of memento, and they found all these samples. Well, they found 2 things in it. One is called nanothermite. Now, nano meaning the technology is put in a laboratory. It's not accidentally put together like a bunch of aluminum dust sits on top of a bunch of ferric oxide dust, and suddenly you have a nanothermite or a thermite reaction. This is actually produced in a laboratory, so it's much more efficient. It can be turned into a liquid, and it can be painted onto steel. Now, they found this residue in all 9 samples of the dust. And they also found, Tucker, you ever seen a welder cut like with a blowtorch? You see the sparks flying off? You ever look at what those are when those cool? They're perfectly round balls of steel, because what happens to fluid when it's together? The surface tension Just that's why raindrops come down round, is because the surface tension of the water pulls it together and it's always round. Well, in this dust, they also found something called microspheres, which is very tiny, tiny round balls of steel, meaning that massive amounts of steel were cut with very high temperatures. So now, in the forensic science of 9/11, these architects and engineers, and we'll play some of their stuff in a little while here, have discovered this nanothermite, which is the incendiary, and the residue. In other words, they've found a bullet and they found the gunpowder. They found both sides of something that was used. Now, have you heard anything about this, or has anybody come to you and talked to you about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard this, several thousand times. Yeah, I've heard it a lot. Absolutely. I mean, that, these buildings did not collapse in the way you would expect they would have at all. This is not, if someone on September 10th had said, 2 planes fly into parallel skyscrapers, cause massive fires, what happens next? I don't think one engineer in 100 would have predicted what happened. So, yeah, I buy that completely.
Especially since the plane didn't hit Building 7.
The CIA was behind it, however.
Well, again, you didn't have a building, no plane hit Building 7. So I'm just going to play, I don't know if we need to play all of this, but I'll just play a little bit. This is a lot of the engineers and architects. Basically, it was a 15-minute documentary they put together, and we didn't have that kind of time, so I kind of cut it down to about 2 minutes of audio. I'll play a little bit and stop and then kind of get your reaction.
Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen.
He's saying a crew put that together quickly.
Het is in opdracht gebeurd. Het heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Let's just think about this. Controlled demolitions cannot be engineered and rigged in a day. It takes months. And therefore, this event must have been planned in advance.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
That was your official response to your government right there, by the way. That was NIST. That was them reading their report loud.
Well, what do you think?
Building number 7 descended in free fall for the first 100 feet, which means that there was absolutely no resistance to the descent whatsoever.
NIST has admitted it went into free fall for 8 stories. And going from motionless to free fall instantly, that's a bothersome part of the puzzle because NIST never explained it.
We've got a building that came down in its own footprint, so all of the columns really needed to be severed at the same time in order for that structure to fall the way that we saw.
The symmetry is the smoking gun.
The whole building completely comes down in one continuous motion. There couldn't have been any structural resistance.
But the likelihood of that failure dragging the entire building in such a fashion that all the columns would fail at the same time is an impossibility.
These are experts, Tucker. I'm not an expert, and I'm sure you don't claim to be an expert, but they're using the word impossibility. That's hard to argue with.
Well, it's not that hard to argue with. I mean, it happened, so, who knows what to say about it. I mean, clearly, as I said, it was unexpected. I'm not an expert on the melting point of steel or on the, behavior of flaming office buildings. But there's a massive logical leap, and more important, a factual leap between noting that, yes, this is weird behavior, which I think everyone agrees with, and suggesting that there were incendiary charges placed in the buildings months before. And let me just be really clear, Scott. There's no evidence of any kind that is true. There's none. There's not one person who's ever come forward to say, I saw someone placing such a charge, I placed such a charge, I have knowledge of such a charge, I sold the incendiary charge to this person. There's zero evidence.
So you're looking for guys with death wishes. You're just looking for guys with death wishes.
Criminals don't usually come forward.
Yeah. By the way, we're going to go to one more piece of audio, and that would be eyewitnesses.
No, wait, hold on. That is such a...
What?
That's
I'm sitting here.
That is a dodge.
I'm giving you...
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You're just saying, of course no one's coming forward. That person would have to have a death wish.
Yeah.
Who are these people who would murder knowingly thousands of American citizens in order to what? Make the Iraq War possible? Like, let's stop playing these silly games with these engineers and these audio tapes. You do
Silly
this for a living.
games.
I want to know
Yeah.
what you think. I don't want to hear any more of your
Okay.
opinion. I want to know your opinion.
All right,
okay?
cool. All right.
And I want to know why you think American citizens would do this to their fellow American citizens. Don't beat around the bush. Don't give me these, well, maybe it's, the cemetery is the smoking gun. That's just, come on. Let's be real. Who do you think did this and why?
Absolutely. It's like it's never happened in history before. That's what you're saying.
Did these buildings fell this way?
No, you're
time
asking
planes
me
flew
about
into office buildings?
Jesus Christ. You're asking me about American citizens killing American citizens. Is that what your question is?
I'm asking you who these people were and why they did it. It's a really simple question. You're making all these implications and then hiding behind
facts and science.
Experts making, charges that aren't really charges. This has never happened before. Okay, yeah, a building has never come down this way. Fine. But you're claiming that this is a conspiracy, and I'm asking you to put some meat on those bones.
Sure, absolutely.
Tell me who did this and why.
All right. We'll go back in time a little bit. I'm going to go for 30 seconds over the history of the USS Liberty, which was attacked, and we all know this paperwork has been released on the Liberty. It was actually attacked by Israeli jets disguised as Egyptian jets. It was called a false flag attack. It was meant to draw the U.S. into the Israeli-Egyptian war. We also know, now we've seen the Northwood documents. Hang on.
Like, how much
Tucker,
do you know about
hey,
this,
this is a talk show. Don't be shouting me down.
I'm not shouting you down. I'm just, before you go on.
All right, well, let me answer the question.
Okay.
Okay? You ask a question, I'm answering your question, Tucker. You asked me what my opinion was, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess you can just say kind of whatever you think and pretend it's fact, but...
Well, how about you let me finish before you come up with your synopsis of what I think?
All right.
Thank you. Operation Northwoods, designed by Lyman Lemonster, Joint Chief of Staff in the early 60s. Bay of Pigs failed. They were looking for a reason for us to go into Cuba and take out Castro. We needed a boogeyman, and they literally created a plan to attack U.S. citizens, create Cuban so-called terrorists, shoot down a fake plane. It was called Operation Northwoods. Your own generals at the top of your own government had no problems using a few hundred or thousand American citizens as the fodder to go to war. It's called false flag terror. It's been done forever. The Gulf of Tonkin, which got us into Vietnam, as opposed by many, many people. We find out now that McNamara, the man who said it happened, literally said it was a mistake. It never happened. 58,000 people are dead. They're Americans, over 1 million Vietnamese, and who knows how many Laotians were killed because of a lie, an attack that never took place. Now, let's get to PNAC, the Project for the New American Century. They wanted to go to basically get to that footprint around all that oil. And the only way they knew America would go for it is if we were to have someone attack us, as in, oh, we need a boogeyman. Guess what? There's no more Russians. Oh, the terrorists are the new bad people. And suddenly, now we have a reason to go to war. It's called false flag terror. PNAC actually predicted it. They said they needed it. They said they needed a new Pearl Harbor. I mean, if you want to go for the people that needed this to happen, they literally wrote it down and put their pretty fucking faces right there for all of us to see. So it's not like this has never been done before, and it's not like it's not being done now.
Can I ask you a couple just quick questions?
Sure.
What does PNAC stand for?
Project for the New American Century.
Who worked there specifically?
Oh, let me see. Pearl, Wolfowitz, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Jeb Bush. That's off the top of my head. Do you need me to go get a list?
It's just, I guess what bothers me is, look, everybody's entitled to his own opinions, and I have a lot of opinions that may be stupid or whatever. I'm sure I do. I know I do. But you're not entitled to your own facts, and you literally have no idea what you're talking about.
Really?
And it bothers me that your listeners probably don't know that.
It only took you 25 minutes to attack the messenger.
I actually know the answer to this question because I worked in the same office complex as the Project for the New American Century, and not one person you mentioned worked there. Not one.
They all signed the document. They all signed the document. They all signed the document.
Calling for a new Pearl Harbor. So you're saying that the project for the new American century is behind 9/11? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the project.
What are you saying?
Well, you're going to let me answer your question?
I'm letting you right now. Answer it.
You asked me, what am I saying? Be quiet and let me say it. I'm saying
What's the answer?
The project for the new American century was having problems selling weapons. No boogeyman. You know, after the wall fell in late 80s, the arms sales in this country plummeted. We had no bad guy to go after. So, well, if we're going to expand our military spending, and by the way, they in their document, they needed about $900 million more a year, and they got way more than that, as we find out, as history tells us. But they were looking to increase military spending by about $100 million a year. That was their plan. It was called, the name of the document is called Rebuilding America's Defenses. And I don't know if Dick Cheney was walking in the hallway, but I know he signed the document, Tucker.
But Scott, you're embarrassing yourself. Like, anybody who knows anything about this is laughing right now. PNAC did not sell arms to anybody. PNAC is not a weapons company. PNAC was a small group of neoconservative foreign policy experts with their own views. Yes, they definitely, I think, wanted to invade Iraq and
they were connected to the Carlyle group. The Carlyle group.
To say that they were trying to sell weapons reveals that you literally have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep.
And that's embarrassing.
You're attacking the messenger.
Spend a little time. No, I'm not attacking the messenger.
Sure you
I
are.
happen to know a lot
Sure
about
you
this
are.
subject. You got the wrong guy on your show today.
Sure you are.
Because
You're attacking
I know
the
a lot
messenger.
about PNAC because I work next door.
Well, the neat thing
they
is...
were not selling weapons, and you're saying they are, which reveals that you are a moron.
Oh,
you don't deserve to talk about
He's
this.
already into the name-calling now. Now he's into calling people names.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying I am calling you on this question
This
a
is what
moron.
dude, it's what you always do.
Totally wrong.
You've been doing it for a decade. The moment someone throws facts, science, evidence in your face, you start calling them names.
But that's not a fact. PNAC did not sell weapons. You just said they did.
No, I said they needed to increase weapons.